Oh man, what a day! All right, we're live. We're gonna let this thing roll for a minute. Let people get in here. It's been a day. It's been a day. It's been a day, people. We'll let people roll in. We'll let people roll in just for another minute before we get going. Here live from Session Cocktails, downtown Auburn. Misting a little bit, but a lot of people walking around, man. It's for sure a Friday before game day. So I think the parade's going in about an hour. No, 2 hours. I think the parade's at 6 o'clock tonight, homecoming parade. At the Session Cup. What a day. So here's what we're going to do as people roll in, and I'll kind of repeat this a few times as we roll. But we're just going to chat, man. We'll hang out for an hour. We'll answer as many questions as we can. So if you're watching, pop a question into the chat, and Zach will pull it up, and we'll answer it, man. I'll answer as many questions as we can. So don't be afraid to get in there, and we'll roll through as many as we possibly can as we go. We'll give it here just another minute or so. We'll let some people kind of roll in if they want. If you're not at auburnlive.com and not a subscriber, today would have been a good day to be a subscriber. Good day to be a subscriber. Zach's in the back. He'll be pulling up questions. Shoot me any news or notes that I need to know about. (11-1). Justin Thomas is 11-1. Zach, you can kind of give me the thumbs up once you think it's kind of rolling, and we'll kind of jump into things. Bo says over under 200 rushing yards tomorrow. Got to be over. Got to be over. New Mexico's defense is not good. They're not good. They've given up 48 points a game. Not great. I mean, and so you got to figure Auburn's going to lean on that a little bit. They're going to want to see what Hank Brown can do. They're going to, so I mean, Hank will sling it, but you got to think they're going to lean on the rushing game and create some opportunities to run the ball. So we'll see. Cole Waldrop says, do you have any worries about the D-line against New Mexico? No, not really about the D-line. I just think they have an athletic quarterback that can make plays. It could look like Cal at times, where the guy scrambles and makes a play. Like I think you got to contain him better than you did against Mendoza. Mendoza got out of the pocket and then made plays. And credit Cal, like they made plays, but that guy got out of the pocket a lot. So I think you've got to try to contain this guy a little bit better and don't let him just escape. Mendoza basically was dropping back as soon as something wasn't there, he was gone. And so we've got to try to find a way to keep him in the pocket a little bit. And not let him get out there, and then in those DBs they get one-on-one chasing people around. It gets tough. All right, we'll still roll through some questions, but let's just talk about what happened today. So yeah, the quarterbacks were met with on Friday morning. They evaluated the entire week of practice, film, and everything. The quarterbacks, so Hugh Freeze, Ken Austin, Jesse Stone, met with both quarterbacks. Ken Austin and Jesse Stone were all involved, and Freeze obviously made the call. But the quarterbacks were met with on Friday morning. The decision was made to go with Hank. Look, we talked about it on the podcast. We were wondering, like, what do you learn if you start Peyton Thorne and then you play Hank Brown against the subpar defense? What do you actually learn? And I think that's where Hugh Freeze was at in his decision making. He's thinking, look, SEC play's coming. I have one shot. I have this new non-conference game, and then it's SEC play. If I'm going to give Hank a shot, it's got to be now. And so it was a tough call, but I think the timing dictated Hank starting. If this were Oklahoma, I feel like Peyton would probably start the game, and then Hank's ready to go if things go bad. But you go with your experienced guy. And so I think the timing of it and the fact it was New Mexico, I think that opened the door for, hey, if it's going to be Hank, it's got to be now. And look, if you're going to start Hank, you don't play him a few series and then play Peyton. It's Hank's show. It's going to be Hank's show. Now, could Peyton get in the game? Second half, like sure. But I think it's Hank's show. And if this thing gets out of hand and you want to put Peyton in at the end of the game for a drive or two, I could easily see that happening. But if you're starting Hank, then it needs to be his show, and he needs every single rep he can get until it literally doesn't make sense to play him. If you get up and it doesn't make sense to play him anymore and you want to pull him real late, fine. But heck, you can make the argument to play him every single play. I don't care if the score is 45-0. And so I think it's going to be really interesting to see what they do, how he comes out. I think Hank's got some moxie. He's not afraid to swing it. You lose a little bit of athletic ability, right? So offensive line has got to pick it up and play better. Offensive line has got to fix their pass pro issues because you don't have Peyton Thorne. Peyton Thorne, for whatever issues he had throwing the ball, he was athletic and he made some plays and he threw it around. You got to protect better because Hank doesn't have that kind of athletic ability. So that group needs to do their job. But it'll be Hank's show, and we'll see what happens. James Stalling says, "Were you surprised at the news?" Not really. No. I mean, like I said, I think given the fact that you had this non-conference game before SEC play, I think that changed everything. If this were Oklahoma and he were starting Hank Brown for the first time, that would surprise me. But I think given the timing of all this, it makes some sense to go with Hank now. And look, if Hank doesn't play well, Peyton is an experienced quarterback, and it's a team that you should beat, and you can bring Peyton back off the bench. If for some reason it just goes poorly and you need Peyton to sort of save the day. Jacob says, do y'all think Hank has a better arm than Peyton? I think Hank throws a really good deep ball. I would say Hank probably throws a better deep ball. Probably, I don't know, man. I'm not a quarterback guru, but I'd probably overall does Hank have a better arm than Peyton? Probably. But Peyton's arm's pretty decent. Like, his arm's good enough. I think Hank has a better deep ball. I think Peyton has got plenty of arm to, like, do the job. But I think Hank's probably got a little bit better deep ball, maybe a little bit more accuracy on the deep ball. That's one of the things we heard about throughout fall camp was, even going back, was that Hank throws a really good deep ball. Like, his accuracy is really good downfield. And that's the one thing that wasn't happening in this offense. I think Peyton was 1 for 7, 20 yards or more downfield last week. So that's what's got to get fixed. Josh Corbett says, have you seen Hank throw this week? No, we saw him on Tuesday. I mean, we watched a little bit on Tuesday, and but we watched 10 minutes, and it's them kind of going through drills. So it's not even. It's I posted that video on social media. It's nothing crazy, and so we watched a little bit. I can tell you, I think both quarterbacks handled it well. I can say this, for all the criticism Peyton Thorne gets, much like Bo Nix, I'm going to tell whoever's listening, and you feel free to tell whoever's not listening, those are two really good human beings. Bo Nix was, and Peyton Thorne is. And so I get the criticisms. I get it, and they're fair. It's fair game to be respectful and fair-minded in your criticism. Fair game. But, like, let's not go further than that, because you do have, like, some good people. Like, Peyton Thorne's a really quality person. Represents that team and that university well. And so you might not want him to play, but, man, let's not go down the road of getting personal and trashing these guys, because I promise you, if you met him and knew him, you'd be like, I'm glad that dude wears an Auburn uniform. He represents things well, even if he doesn't play how you want him to play. So I just want to throw that out there. Bill Miner says, if this goes south, how much heat does Freeze get? All of it. All of it. And I would assume by if this thing goes south, just if Hank Brown doesn't play well. And then, like, Peyton comes out and maybe kind of looks so-ish. Yeah. I mean, at the end of the day, Hugh Freeze didn't go into the portal to get a quarterback. He had opportunities. He didn't do it. And then it's their job to develop the quarterbacks they have. And then it's also their job to figure out the strengths and weaknesses of the quarterback and then develop the offense around it and understand your personnel that you brought in, understand the scheme. What are we going to do best? Like, that's all on Freeze and Ken Austin to some degree and Derek Nix to some degree. But when you take back the offense and you take back play calling and you kind of scapegoat Philip Montgomery, it's on you. It's on you. And I'm telling you, there were a lot of issues against Cal that were not Peyton Thorne. I've said it on the podcast. I've said it other places. And I'm just telling you, there were pass protection issues, wrong routes being run. There were other issues. So Quarterback play needs to get better, yes, but you better fix that other stuff too, or you're only going to get so much better. You got to fix the other things. Um, Taylor Conwell says if we're going all in on youth, why not put it on Walker White? Well, I mean, Hank's youth. Hank's a redshirt freshman, and I think he's obviously been in the system for a year. So like he's the next up. He's the next up. I think Walker's going to redshirt, barring I think injuries. If Hank doesn't do the job, you probably just go back to Peyton and figure it out. I mean, I don't really see a scenario where you take the redshirt off Walker and leave Hank and Peyton on the sideline if they're healthy. It'll pretty much have to be Hank or Peyton. I think getting the job done. By the way, it's Effing Cocktails. That's where we're at for people hopping on now. Downtown Auburn, right here on Magnolia. They're a great partner, great sponsors of our football shows. And so we're going to start these Fridays. We're going to start going live for an hour or more, and talking about the game and all that good stuff. You can see behind me, it's a really, really cool spot. It's all couch and bar, and there's some bar seating and these couches, and then you can come over here and sit right here. And there's booths that line the wall, and so you're pretty much you're not getting in unless you have somewhere to sit. So it's a really, really cool spot to come hang out. We're right here in front. So if anybody's in town watching this, come by and say hey. We'll talk about what's going on. He says, do you think Hank starting is a one-game decision? For now, yeah. I mean, I do. I don't think you can go any further beyond one game at this point. You know, earlier in the week, Keith Reese said that he had a very short leash on the quarterback position. In other words, it needed to produce. Of course, now what's funny about that comment is, well, now you're starting Hank. So does he have a short leash, or did he make the comment Wednesday thinking Peyton was going to start? That makes more sense on Wednesday. If he says we have a very short leash on the quarterback, if we play poorly again, Wednesday it sounded like he was talking about Peyton starting and Peyton having a short leash. It would be weird to make the move and start Hank and then tell Hank you have a short leash when Hank's never played. He's never had he's played, but he hasn't had extended action. So I would think the comment about having a short leash Wednesday probably is wiped out now, and like to some degree. In other words, if Hank goes out there and struggles the first two drives, I don't think you just panic and put Peyton back in. If you're going to start Hank, you put him out there, and maybe the first two drives suck. But if you're going to see what he's got, you got to see what he's got. You cannot panic after a drive or two if things don't go well and go, Peyton, go back in there, because now you just exacerbate the issue to me. Because then if Peyton plays well, you didn't even really give Hank a chance. And then if Peyton doesn't play well, you hurt Hank's confidence because you yanked him so quick. So it'll be interesting to see sort of how that happens. Josh says update on Miller at tackle and Cam at wide receiver. No, I mean, last we heard was they were both doubtful. I doubt they play. We heard all week was shuffling along the offensive line from both players and coaches. So it really makes you think Isaiah Miller won't play. Cam probably wants to play. So I think part of it just depends on how Cam feels and what his range of motion is. You'd like to think you could go out here and win without him. And look, if Cam goes out there and gets hit, does it make his injury worse, or is it just sore? If it's just soreness and he needs to work through it, maybe. But if he can't get his hand over his head, if he can't raise his arm over his head, he doesn't need to be out there. I mean, that last pick was because he couldn't even make a play on the ball. He couldn't even try to break it up. So if he doesn't have full range of motion, he doesn't even need to be out there because he's a liability at that point. Forrest, Forrest, the Buckner, if Hank does well, does he get the start for Arkansas, or is this the test run for him and Peyton? No, I think it's Hank's show right now. At this point, it's now Hank's job. And if Hank plays well, he'll start against Arkansas. I mean, I think that's what you do when you start him. It's Hank's job. If he goes out there and plays well, it'll be his job against Arkansas. And honestly, New Mexico's defense is obviously not great. It's hard to imagine a scenario where, what would Hank have? How bad would Hank have to play Saturday for them to revert and go back to Peyton against Arkansas? I mean, you got to figure they're going to run the ball. Hank will complete some passes. Like, they should obviously win. They should score some points. And so even if Hank doesn't play great, even if he has his mistakes in his first start, you would think he'll play decent enough, even if it's not great, for Hugh Freeze to say he had his jitters, he had a few mental errors in game one, but he played fine, and we'll build on that. You know what I mean? If you're going to start him. So, like, to me, it would have to be just a disaster for Peyton to somehow start against Arkansas, probably at this point. But we'll see, man. We'll see. I think it's a bold move for Hugh Freeze. I think it's one he felt like he needed to make, probably for a few reasons. And look, you're going to see what you've got in Hank, good or bad. I mean, next year, right? Next year, you're going to have Hank Brown, Walker White, a quarterback coming in from the high school ranks, and then maybe a portal quarterback. So, like, next spring is going to could be a really interesting battle. And if nothing else, you're gonna get more data on Hank Brown, which isn't a bad thing at all. Josh says, "What's the issue with our DBs not turning for the ball?" Yeah, I don't know. It was kind of a rough day for them. And again, I'll say Cal's receivers made some tough catches. They made some good plays where it looked like the Auburn DB just barely didn't turn in time. But I thought they played better second half. Pass breakup from Jaron Thompson. Cam Lee had a pass breakup second half. So I think they improved a little bit. But it gets tough when you start chasing around. When that quarterback was moving out of the pocket and it became like a one-on-one scenario, that becomes tough as a DB because now it's a little scattered. Or you're covering the guy for maybe an extra second, and it's tough. I mean, I thought the coverage overall, nobody was just wide open. Thought they were just maybe turning their head a little quicker. Cal players made some good catches, so it wasn't like a total disaster. But you'd like to see the quarterback contained a little bit better, and then just obviously like to see the DBs get a hand on the ball. But they weren't just completely toasted. So hopefully they're not that far off from making some plays. It'll be interesting to see if Keontae Scott plays or what his role is. That'll be interesting to see. Let's see. Kingsley Moore, what you got, Kingsley? I want to ask this one more time. Maybe you can answer. Is there any chance that Derek Nix was allowed to call the plays against Cal? As in the majority of the play calls. I'm hoping that's what happened. No, I have no reason to think he called the majority of the. I have no reason to think that he called the majority of the plays. I think it's a collaboration. I think Freeze is the primary play caller, but I think it's a collaboration. I think it's a collaboration. So I think they all sort of, hey, I saw this, but I mean, it's Freeze's baby. And you see that with the vertical passing game. I mean, that's Freeze's style. He wants to attack downfield. And I kind of think that was Hugh Freeze's deal. So it'll be interesting to see what happens Saturday. I said it in the piece, the predictions in the respective piece on AuburnLive.com. I said this week's an interesting balance because Hugh Freeze, schematically, he wants to take what the defense gives him and he wants to be balanced, right? But then you toss on, they haven't run the ball a lot, so he'd like to get that going. And then you toss on, now Hank Brown's playing, and I need to get reps from him. So you go into this game saying, I want to take what the defense gives me, but I want to be balanced. But I also want to get the running game going a little bit because we haven't gotten that going. And then I also need to see what Hank Brown can do, and I want to test some things out and stress him a little bit and see what he can do. And then also I want to win the game. So you've got a bunch of stuff that's on your mind. Obviously, goal number one is win the game. But Hugh Freeze has got to be careful in this game to not try to accomplish all that. He's got to stick to whatever the plan is, which is, hey, above all else, I'm going to do what? Above all else, I'm going to take what the defense gives me. Or above all else in this game, we're running the ball. He needs to make sure he goes into this thing with kind of the number one priority and not get caught up in trying to attack downfield, seeing what Hank's got. But, I need to get the running game some confidence. But also, man, the defense is just giving me this play, and I just want to run this play over and over again. He's got to be careful about sort of combining all that stuff, and then you get into kind of some randomness and a weird sort of strategy. That's what you don't want to have. Corey, I missed that question. Tim Tucker, can you give us any intel on what happened in the portal as it pertains to quarterback? Well, yeah, sure. I mean, we talked about a lot at auburnlive.com in the winter. They wanted Riley Leonard. That was looking good until Notre Dame got involved. And I'll say this about how Hugh Freeze deals with not just quarterbacks, but pretty much anybody when it comes to NIL. And he will recruit you to a point, and he'll play the NIL game to a point. But there will be a point where if you don't jump on board, or if NIL becomes too much of a priority in the whole recruitment, he will move on. I think he struggles with NIL because he wants a player to come in and want to be here and want to buy into the culture. And that's not where we're at. Like NIL is too important. And I think Freeze understands that, but there is a sort of a point where he'll say, hey, okay, kind of last chance. I'm not begging. I'm not begging for you, and we're not going to play games. And so with Riley Leonard, that was a deal where Auburn felt like they were in a good spot. And then Notre Dame kind of got involved, and then all of a sudden the NIL demands sort of changed a little bit. And Freeze and them said, you know what? We're good. We'll move on. You can go there. Now, could he have ended up at Notre Dame? Possibly, yes. He grew up like in Notre Dame, all that good stuff. Cam Ward, there was interest from Auburn, but again, Auburn didn't want to pay and get involved with him. He was asking a lot. Miami was willing to do it. In the end, Auburn wasn't. So again, that was an issue where they decided not to sort of meet those demands of the NIL. There were other quarterbacks that were interested. Kyle McCord at Syracuse I think there was interest there. Jordan McLeod. I think there were other guys you could have gone after. They were hoping Seth Hennigan might enter from Memphis. He didn't. You go back the year before, Grayson McCall. There were some issues with academics, so he couldn't come over. They wanted Devin Leary, but they got involved too late, and Kentucky already had him. So they missed on a couple guys the first year. But this past year, they just kind of made the decision on a few guys not to get involved because NIL, and then some other guys. I think they looked at the situation and thought, not me, but I think they said, is Jordan McLeod a surefire, absolutely a better option than what I've got? Because if he is, okay. If he's not, if it's like I think he might be, but I'm not 1,000% sure, then you devote NIL resources to a quarterback. You bring him in, you disrupt the quarterback room and the energy of that and what that could be because Walker White's doing. And then what if it turns out he's not that much better? And then on top of that, if you did go after a portal quarterback, do you have the resources to go get Keandre Lambert-Smith down the road or somebody else down the road? I don't know. Maybe not. So I think there's a lot going on in sort of weighing the quarterback situation. In the end, they just decided there's not somebody that I love so much that I'm going to devote the resources to bring in over my current situation. I'm just going to try to win with what I got here at quarterback, and I'm going to go make sure that I've got NIL resources to try to fill some other positions, whether it's Keandre Lambert-Smith, Philip Bleedy, Joe Carter, of course, Gage Keys, where some of those guys aren't doing much, but you needed depth. So anyway, a lot goes into that stuff. He made the call to not bring anybody in. Corey says, what do you need to see from Hank for him to lock down a position? Well, I mean, all you want to see from the quarterback, from Hank in this game, you want to see mental errors at a minimum. I mean, that's number one. First start, first extended action. You want to see him make the right checks. You want to see him set the protection well. You want to see him hit open receivers. Like, that's number one. it's not necessarily lighting it up or you want to see him throw for 300 yards. You want to see the mental part, and you want to come out of the game and you want to hear Hugh Freeze say, likely on Monday, you want to hear Hugh Freeze say on Monday, mental errors were very low. He made the right checks. He set the protections well. He made, 95% of the time, he made the right RPO decision. He had open receivers and he hit them. But just the simple stuff. That's what you want to hear from him. He's young. And so it's not about like, I want to see a certain amount of yards or touchdowns or whatever. You want to feel like Hank's got a good grasp of what to do, when to do it, and he doesn't get rattled by his first start. That's what you want to hear. And then grow from that. Then go into the Arkansas game, and he's got a little confidence, and he's got that first start under his belt, and then grow. But it's the foundational stuff is what you want to hear post-game and specifically Monday, that from a mental standpoint, he made the right calls, he made the right decisions. The moment didn't seem too big. That's the stuff you want to hear, and then you can build on that. You don't want to hear, well, he threw 3 touchdowns, but New Mexico stinks, and he didn't set protections all that well, or he threw 3 touchdowns, but he also missed 5 open receivers. Like, you don't want to hear a lot of that. And that goes for a lot of positions. It goes for the offensive line too. That goes for Jeremiah Wright. It goes for Tyler Johnson if he plays. Percy Lewis. There were some Ronan Chambers might not play. He of course played, but maybe he's back on the sideline. But pass pro, there was crazy stuff. Rivaldo Fairweather goes for him too. Tim Tucker, how real was the Salter smoke? Pretty real. I'm not exactly sure why that didn't end up happening, but pretty real. That was a pretty real situation. Hey, I'm curious to, by the way, as we do this, if you've got predictions, score predictions and stuff, toss them in there. Zach will toss a few of them up. Logan says, how do you think the locker room feels about this decision? I think they're fine. I think Peyton is a well-respected player in the locker room. I think Hank is a respected player in the locker room. I don't think there's any issues here. I think, and number one, that starts with Peyton. I don't know how many people remember back to 2009. I guess it was 2009 when Chris Todd was brought in, and you had Cody Burns, and how Cody handled not being the starter at quarterback going into 2009. That helped the situation. How he stood up and said, listen, I'm here to help the team. Chris is the guy. Chris won the job going to 2009. So a lot depends on that guy. And I'm telling you, Peyton's a really class act. And I promise you, he's handling it with maturity and exactly how a team captain should handle it. So it starts there. He's going to handle it well. He'll be right there with Hank. He'll help Hank every step of the way. And so as long as those two guys are good, it'll be fine. Everything will filter down. If Peyton decided to not handle it well or get guys on his side, that's when it's a problem. There's not going to be any. So I think the locker room will be fine. Peyton's well respected. I think the receivers are probably eager to see what Hank can do because he'll sling it. He'll let it go. So we'll kind of see what happens and what that looks like. But no locker room issues at all because I think you have two guys that are good people and will handle it well. Devil Dog 2003. Do you think the decision to start Hank Brown was made earlier in the week? If not, do you think they have had enough time to game plan? I don't think it was made earlier in the week. No, I think that they let the whole week play out, which really Monday is kind of they see a Monday afternoon. It's more about corrections. Tuesday is kind of the first real practice day. So I think they went through corrections Monday, went through practice Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. I think they watched all of that film, took in all of that data, and made the call. So I don't think it was made earlier in the week because, like I said earlier, Hugh Freeze said on Wednesday that the quarterback position had a short leash, and that pretty much was pointing to saying Peyton has a short leash. And so I don't think the decision was made then at all. I think it was still, very much up in the air. Man, I love this. Hey, by the way, if you're joining us now, Session Cocktails downtown Auburn, Magnolia is where we're at. Great place, as you see behind me. They sponsor all our shows. I give them shout outs all the time. But coming here on game day, coming here on tonight, come here tomorrow, hop in here tomorrow before after the game. But if you're in Auburn, please come here and check them out. Tell them that we sent you. Tell them, hey, I heard about this on Auburn Live, or tag them on social media, that kind of stuff. It really helps us. Tim says, how much will the coaches on the headset be involved in setting protections? I feel like that could eliminate a lot of the mental errors. Um, yeah, maybe, but a lot of that stuff's in real time. I mean, that defensive front's moving or whatever, and that quarterback's got to set it, and that quarterback's got to make the call. And the offensive line has to do their job too. The offensive line can be a part of that. I mean, Connor Liz played a whole year of football. Jeremiah Wright's, been around for years and should be a pretty mature guy. Dylan Wade, these aren't young guys. Like, those guys should be able to help point out, hey, I got him, whatever. Some of the stuff I was seeing, I had an opportunity to watch the film this past week against the Cal game with somebody that has a lot of knowledge of offense and what they're trying to do. And there were a lot of basic mistakes when it came to pass protection. Just literally going the wrong way, allowing an inside blitzer to run free when you've got, like, the first thing you're taught is you don't let the guy on the inside come. You let, worst case, if there's two people, let the guy on the outside come. Just simple stuff that was happening, that as soon as that happens, the play's done. As soon as there's a breakdown after the ball snapped in pass protection, all bets are off. And so there was too many of that. There's too much of that happening. And so I think that's something they got to get fixed. And I hate if Miller doesn't play. I hate that, because you'd like to see that exact same unit go out there and continue to build their cohesion and their chemistry and grow. And if Miller's not out there, then you have a shuffled line that might play well, but then against Arkansas, if Miller comes back, then you're back to the other groups. You just wish you could go through this week with some unity from that group last week. Corey says, are there any legitimate worry about the Freeze 4 already being unhappy? No, I don't think there's 2 games in. There's no, you're not going to have any type of real feedback about those guys being unhappy or anything like that. I mean, I think you got to let all that play out. I am curious to see sort of how more of them can you get Malcolm more involved? Perry, I get it. Perry arrived in the summer, but can you pick a couple plays out? He's a big athletic target. Can you find a couple things he's really good at and get him the ball? Can you find a couple things Malcolm's at and get him the ball? Those guys are good players. Can you find a down and distance on the field, a situation on the field, whatever, that you're like, all right, this is a quick screen to Malcolm. To me, Malcolm's a good enough athlete where you should go twice a game. He's getting the ball quick, either a quick screen or something, speed sweep, something. But 2 or 3 times a game, I'm calling a play designed for him, specifically for him, to get him the ball in space. And maybe there's an opportunity like that for Perry too, but you'd like to see a little bit of that. Those guys, I think Perry, Malcolm, and Sam Jackson played a total of 10 snaps against Cal. And I know that they had turnovers that reduced their total number of plays, but you gotta play more. Like, Sam Jackson's a freak athlete. He is a freak athlete. Okay, maybe he doesn't know all the playbook. Maybe he's still learning how to get back playing receivers, because he hasn't played it in a few years. But I promise you could pick a few good things that he's good at and get him the ball. Get it the same way, kind of like Malcolm. That guy's a hell of an athlete. If Hank wants to ball out and keep the job, does this cause an issue with Juice and Auburn? I don't know. I don't think so. I mean, there's nothing about Deuce's recruitment that I think involves anybody on Auburn's current roster. But if Hank came in and was a stud, then that's something that isn't currently on the table. It's a variable that would be a new variable. It doesn't exist now, so it would be a new thing. So is it possible? It's possible, yeah. If Hank comes in and balls out, like, looks good, and Auburn reels off 3 games in a row and starts league play 2-0, and let's say Deuce is still, let's say Deuce comes to Oklahoma and Hank Brown wins this game, Arkansas and Oklahoma. Possible. he could go, well, now all of a sudden they got a redshirt freshman that's going to hold the job probably all year and is going to enter next spring as the starter. But probably not, because if Deuce was going to come in, Peyton was going to leave. It was going to be a wide open job anyways. So I don't know if Hank. I mean, a lot of those guys feel confident in their own skills. So like I think that somebody like Deuce probably wouldn't care. Those guys think they're going to come in and either come in and start, or if you're Deuce, you're like, listen, I was okay coming in and redshirting anyway, but whatever. But most of those guys are pretty confident in what they do, so I don't know how much Hank balling out would help or hurt the scenario. I think that's kind of its own recruitment, and I don't know that it has a lot to do with how Hank plays necessarily. Taylor says, does Hank's quick release allow for less pressure? Yeah, I mean, maybe, and that's a fair point. Like, pass protection's got to change. He's not as good of an athlete as Peyton, but he has shown the propensity to get rid of the football. And so, yes, if you get rid of the football, yeah, that'll help pass protection issues. I'll say, though, the pass protection issues I saw were it was not a lot of, well, Peyton just held the ball too long and the blocking broke down. Now, on the pick that somebody hit Peyton's arm, maybe, although even that play really, I think somebody came pretty free, if I remember correctly. But there wasn't a lot of like, hey, we can't block all day. It was like breakdowns from the very beginning. So even if Hank is somebody that gets rid of the ball quicker, there were still issues that happened within the first second of the ball being snapped. If you go watch, for instance, the 3rd and 2 play before the 4th and 2 that went to Cam incomplete, the 3rd and 2 that Rivaldo dropped, go watch Tyler Johnson on that play. He immediately gets turned sideways and the guy goes by. I mean, within the ball being snapped, he got beat. Within the guy step, made contact, Tyler, it happened so quickly that you're like, well, all right, then that's done. That guy was basically free at that point. And that was the one where Peyton had to move left and make a throw. And of course, there were some issues with Rivaldo running. Rivaldo made 2 mistakes running that route. One, he didn't rub Keandre Lambert-Smith's cornerback. Keandre Lambert-Smith would have been open. Rivaldo was supposed to go rub his guy, get in his way, and Keandre Lambert-Smith was going to come underneath. Rivaldo just kind of ran right by that guy. The DB stuck to Dre, and then Rivaldo didn't run the right depth, and then dropped the ball. So anyway, there's some pass protection issues that are happening very quickly. So getting rid of the balls quickly is great, but you got to get everything set, block at least for a couple seconds to do the right thing. Wonder Boy, what you got? What do you think Hank didn't? Why do you think Hank didn't get a live look after Thorne's performance so poorly last week? I mean, that's a tough. I mean, you're in the middle of a dogfight at that point. Cal's a good team. What'll be interesting is let's see where Cal finishes the year. That'll be interesting to watch, by the way. It doesn't excuse how Auburn played offensively, but I am curious to see if Cal's like an 8-win team. But I think now they're in a dogfight, and you got to ride with Thorne. I mean, the game was 14-7 until that last run late. It was still you're still in the game. And so I think you stay with Thorne. I think throwing Hank out there in the middle of that game against Cal's defense, which give them credit, it's an experienced defensive coordinator, linebacker that made a ton of plays. Like, they're not bad by any means. I think that would have probably been bad to throw Hank in there. And that game would have been it would have been a really hard situation to get Hank in there. Really hard. So I think it was right to let Peyton ride that out and try to fix it. I don't think throwing Hank out there would have gone particularly well. I don't know if Hank was ready for that. That would have been probably unfair to Hank to some degree. Keith Jackson, does Hank get the entire playbook or a smaller slice of it? Yeah, I mean, we heard earlier in the week, Hugh Freeze is already talking about slimming down the playbook. So I think no matter what, we were going to see a playbook that was toned down to some degree. So that probably answers the question. I mean, Hank's been in the offense last year. Obviously, it's a little different. Montgomery's gone, but a lot of the concepts are the same. Terminology's back to what it was. So he's not going to get I would say not the entire playbook, but I don't think they're going to run. I think they're trying to tone things down this week anyway, regardless. And so I think you'll see run the ball, try to keep things simple. You'll see some shots from Hank. because Hank's good at going deep, and so you'll still see some aggressive shots, but maybe not as many. Maybe you don't see Hank try 8 passes, 20 yards or more downfield. Maybe you see him try 3 or 4. And there's more running, and there's more passes to try to get Hank some confidence and things like that. So I would say a smaller playbook. Yeah, I would say a smaller playbook. I mean, you got to get good at something. At some point, you got to get good at something. Corey says, on the board, you said you still had optimism for Deuce last Friday. A week later, what would be your hot board number? Well, yeah, I mean, look, Jeffrey's been all over it. Things changed last week. When Jeffrey's posted, hey, he's having a hard time telling Marcus Freeman no, that was that week. Last week, things changed. Things changed a little bit. Notre Dame stepped up, matched Auburn's NIL. That was number one. Auburn had a better NIL offer. They don't anymore. And so now it's very much now where do you want to go? Where do you want to be? And as of right now, he likes Marcus Freeman the most. So does he want to play in the SEC? You got to think Hugh Freeze is going to get better athletes than Marcus Freeman is. Hugh Freeze is going to work his butt off to get you good athletes to throw to. And the SEC is a better conference. But he just loves Marcus Freeman, and he's having a hard time saying no. And Notre Dame came up in their NIL. And so I think all those things sort of happening last week changed the dynamics. So we'll see what happens. I think Auburn's going to give it a little more time, but they think they're still in it. But I don't know. It'll be interesting to see how it plays out. But yeah, I'd be right there with Jeffrey. I think Jeffrey's is on it. Auburn's getting busy out here, man. It's a little drizzly, but there's still tons of people walking around, man. Here at Section Cocktail, if you're in town, come say hey. If you're coming to the game, come check this place out. Love it. Love it. What do we got for Josh? Where has Cobb been this year? He's been used minimal at best. Yeah, I mean, we're 2 games in, but yeah, I mean, you remember back to when Hugh Freeze said he wants to use all these guys and get them all touches. I mean, that's not happening so far. I have more of an issue with Damari Austin not getting touches. I think Jeremiah Cobb's good and fast. Damari's the guy to me that needs to be playing a lot more. Damari, in my opinion, is and I said it on the board, is the best route runner, and he's the best blocker and pass protector. And he's a good running back. Jarquez is probably the best at breaking tackles, but something about Jarquez running the ball feels like he doesn't get the most out of his athletic ability. I don't know if he just doesn't hit the hole the way it needs to be hit, or if he misses a gap. I don't know. Something about Jarquez running at times feels like he doesn't get the most out of how good he could be. But he's tough to bring down, and he's got good speed. So he needs his touches. Don't get me wrong, but I just wish Damari was a little bit more part of the game plan. I think he's a good all around back, and I think he does things better than Jarquez in some areas. Damari's the guy that I wish was involved more. And I'll give you a perfect example. You go back, and I think it was the first drive. I think it was Auburn's touchdown drive because they were down there near the end zone against Cal. It was the play where Peyton Thorne had to move up in the pocket, and then Peyton moved right and had to throw it away. You go look at that play. Jarquez is motioned out of the backfield. He's motioned over to the left against the linebacker, one-on-one on the far left side. It's exactly what Auburn wanted. Running back on a linebacker, one-on-one. Everything else is over on the right. The problem is Jarquez isn't your best route runner. Damari is. So if that's the play that's called, I would have loved to have seen Damari substituted in, then call the play. Now you have your best running back route runner out there. What ends up happening is Jarquez runs a slant and go that is not a good route. It's a very sloppy route that was never going to get open. It was a sloppy route. He's not open. And then the receivers just kind of meshed in the middle, and they're running a zone sort of. Nobody was open. Peyton has to throw it away. But you called a good play. You got exactly what you wanted, but you had the wrong running back out there. He's not as good of a route runner. And it was a very sloppy route. And it was pretty much the ball was never going to go there. So I'd love to see Damari get the ball. Steve says, how can they get a read on quarterback play this week versus a weaker opponent than say next week versus Arkansas? Yeah, I mean, that's where I go back to the mental errors of that part of it. You can gauge that. You can come away going, how many times did you make the right decision? I think that's where you're going to have to come away on trying to get a read for quarterback play this week is how many times did you make the right call and build on that. Because it's not going to be about, look, I mean, we saw Alabama A&M against a defense like New Mexico that's been torched for 2 weeks. Of course, we say all this and we don't know what Auburn's offense is going to look like, right? But it's got to be about the execution part of it. It's got to be about the execution part of it. It can't be about yards. I mean, Hank could go out there and chunk a couple bombs and throw for 250, and three touchdowns. But that could be because you're playing against cornerbacks that are overmatched or a scheme that's overmatched. It's got to be about the mental part of the game. You got to come away and go, he made the right decision every time. Every RPO, he made the right call. He made the right pass protection sets. That's what it's got to come down to. And if the yards and the points and all that comes with it, cool. But it's got to come down to he made all the right decisions and he didn't seem rattled. That's going to be the takeaway. They'll know that better than we do in the film room. But Hugh Freeze is pretty transparent, so I assume we'll find out Monday what he feels about that. But that's what it's got to come down to. Corey says, do you think Hugh's recruiting pitch that he's selling has him afraid to just turn the running backs loose and try and run it down people's throat? That's a good question. Hold on, I'm gonna put this. I'm gonna retweet that we're still going here, so people will hop on here for a little bit longer. Yeah, I mean, I would assume you're talking about, his recruiting pitch to quarterbacks and receivers. Maybe you're saying he's reluctant to run the ball because he's trying to impress. He's trying to impress maybe a quarterback or receivers, or he's trying to keep the freshmen happy. I mean, look, only Hugh really knows that. I mean, we don't know that. Only Hugh Freeze knows that. Wouldn't shock me. I think Hugh's nature is to attack downfield, number one. No matter what's going on, he wants to attack. So he's got to battle his nature to really get after it and attack downfield, but also lean on what this line does best right now, which is run. And they're not great, but they're pretty good at run blocking and they got good backs. So he's got to sort of, like I said earlier, he's got to balance taking what the defense gives you, which is kind of what the RPO is. You're reading. And whatever they do, I'm doing the other thing. So, like, hypothetically, you should always be right. Because you should say the defense can never be right because I'm going to read whatever they don't do. But he's got to balance that. He's got to balance to attack downfield. He's got to attack, and then he wants to obviously establish some runs. So there's just a lot going on that he's got to figure out. But I don't know. Maybe he's out there trying to impress Deuce or Caleb Cunningham. Or heck, he's just trying to make sure Cam's going to get all his chances and be happy, and make sure these receivers don't say I made a mistake. I don't know. Probably too early to know some of that stuff. But I would say this: he was always thinking about recruiting. So, but it'd be hard for me to think he would change the game plan or potentially not be as efficient on offense, or potentially even put themselves in a position to lose a game because he wants to do something on the field that might impress a recruit. That's probably, I wouldn't go that far. I wouldn't go that far. As much as he loves to recruit. Josh says, what are your thoughts on what Murray said in his review? We're talking about how Auburn uses running backs to the boundary with it made a lot of sense. For anybody that didn't see that video from Aaron Murray, it was good. He really just showed you every pass play and let you just sort of watch it and you can kind of see for yourself. But no, it made sense. He showed a number of plays where the running back kind of ran out of the backfield and really sort of ran in the way of a curl route. And it was a great point. It's a great point. And it's a point where if you're yelling at Peyton Thorne to get rid of the football, those plays are like, well, where do you want him to throw? Now he's got to hesitate because he would want to throw the curl route, but now there's a DB that's in the window because a running back has, for some reason, run sort of a weird, useless route that's brought a defender into an area where you now can't throw the curl. And by the way, that was Jarquez a number of times, sort of leaking out of the backfield and running kind of either like a nothing route, or he didn't run it very aggressively, or just some weird stuff from Jarquez that I don't quite understand. If he didn't know the route, it looked like he was confused. And it was just some odd stuff from Jarquez at times. There was another time where Jarquez came out of the backfield and ran. He came out of the backfield. He should have stayed in the backfield and picked up a blitzer, and instead he leaves the back. He leaks out. The blitzer comes free, and not only does Jarquez not stay in and pick up the blitzer, but he leaks out and then kind of doesn't even run around. He just sort of like leaked out, and you're like, there's no way you were coached to do that. I mean, the safety's blitzing. You should have stayed in and picked him up. And if you're going to leave, you better be running a route somewhere for him to throw it. He basically just bailed on blocking and then didn't really provide any kind of outlet either. And that happened a few times with Jarquez where you're wondering, what in the world are you doing? So, yeah, it's weird. Reed says, any thoughts on the issue with Rivaldo dropping passes? He also had confusion about blocking for PT's run. Yeah, and I've mentioned this. Like, Rivaldo is like, he didn't play well. He on the play that he dropped the ball, he also ran the wrong route before he dropped the ball. Well, actually made two mistakes. He didn't rub on Keandre Lambert-Smith's defender, which he was supposed to do. And then he ran a route that was supposed to be about basically like a 10-yard out route, plant your foot and go out. He ran about 7 yards and then just like curved his route. So it was like a super lazy route that wasn't even run at the right depth. All of that happened after he didn't even get in the way of Dre's cornerback, his defender. He didn't get in his way. So he gave Keandre no chance to get open. Then he dropped the ball. Then he didn't block for Peyton Thorne's scramble. Couldn't even find the guy to block. And I'll give you another one. Go watch the very first play of the game. Very first play. Very first play could have gone for who knows what. You had trips on the right. And the action was the two guards for Auburn were pulling the opposite way. So the guards were pulling left, but the action was going to go right. So the guards pulled left, which meant the Cal linebacker was reading the guards. So the Cal linebacker was going to move with the guards in the wrong direction. You didn't have to block it. He was going to take himself out of the play. That's the design. The guards pull, and he moves that direction. The linebacker goes that way. The three guys up top, which was Rivaldo and two receivers, were supposed to go straight upfield, and there were three DBs to block. Well, the two receivers go upfield and block. Rivaldo goes down like he's going to crack on the linebacker and runs towards the linebacker that was taking himself out of the play anyway. So Rivaldo ends up going into the middle of the field, blocking nobody, and the guy that made the tackle on Jarquez at the line of scrimmage for no gain is the guy that Rivaldo should have gone and blocked. You can go watch it, first play of the game. So, yes, Rivaldo's got to play better. And he's still raw. Like, you know, he hasn't played football all his life. And he looks the part, and he's athletic. And you want him to be this threat catching the ball. But, like, he was a liability against Cal. More times than, multiple times, he was a liability in critical plays. He needs to play better. Where he says, if Hank locks down the position and goes to win 6 games, how do you think they looked at the Porter this offseason? I mean, I think they'll look at the portal the same no matter what. I mean, first of all, if Hank wins 6, like on top of, so they would be 7-5, I guess is what you're saying. I don't think it'll matter. I mean, Hugh Freeze is going to go after the best players. I don't think there's anything Hank Brown should do say anything. Is Hank Brown going to come in here and light it up, and Auburn's going to go win 9 games in a row or something crazy? Barring something like a 10-2 season, and Hank Brown just goes off, they'll probably go after a portal quarterback no matter what. You got Walker White, who will be unproven but good. Peyton Thorne leaves, and then you're going to bring in a high school quarterback, but he's a true freshman. But I think you're going after a portal quarterback no matter what. But again, it's going to then depend on like who's out there and what are their NIL at, what's their NIL at, and are they that much of a better situation? Like what Hugh doesn't want to do is say, I've got a good quarterback room with Hank and Walker. Those guys get along pretty good. I'm going to bring in this high school freshman. You bring in a portal quarterback, that guy is going to expect to start. He's like, you brought me here to start. So if you bring in a portal quarterback, devote NIL resources to him, and then he doesn't start, there's the potential for a problem. And I think that's part of the equation that Hugh Freeze thinks about. Like, so if you bring in a portal guy, he pretty much better be the guy. Because if he's not, you're asking for an issue in the locker room, or just with that guy having a bad attitude. If he brings in and then you start Hank and he doesn't win the job, like it turns into potentially a locker room issue. And I think that's part of what Hugh Freeze thinks about. But yeah, they're going to go into the floor. They're going to look pretty hard. There's absolutely no question. They're going to look pretty hard. And they're going to figure out if there's a good option or. That's the good thing about Deuce, by the way. Deuce and his family, they don't care if Auburn goes into the portal. Whereas Juju Lewis and his family, they're not going to be happy if Juju gets signed. Let's just say hypothetically Auburn, and then you go into the portal in the offseason, they're not going to be happy, and they've expressed that. So. Deuce and his family are not like that. Like you could get them, and then you could go into the portal, and you're not going to have an issue with Deuce and his family. You would with somebody like Juju. But now you sign Juju, and then you're like, if I go after portal, is he going to flip out? Are they going to pitch it fit? So a lot of stuff you got to deal with these days with NIL. A lot of stuff you got to deal with. Again, we're at Session Cocktail in downtown Auburn right here on Magnolia. Homecoming parade, I think, is in an hour. I think it's at 6 o'clock. So make sure and come down here and check them out. They're already bumping in here. They're pretty busy in here. Come get a drink. Mine's the Gold Rush. Gold Rush is my favorite drink. It's a honey bourbon drink. It's awesome. It's my favorite. It's my go-to. But they got a bunch of stuff. They do a cocktail for a cause every month. This month, I think they're supporting the local basketball team, the Auburn Raptors. So you come in every month; it changes. So come in, have a drink. If you have a drink that's the cocktail for the cause, part of the proceeds go to whatever that cause is, which is really cool. So this month, it's like the local Auburn Raptor basketball teams, kids playing basketball, AAU stuff, and so you kind of support them. It's really cool. Boy, so as far as you can tell, where in the SEC does Auburn rank from an NIL standpoint? Ooh. That's a tough one. So On3 put out, I think this is a good point to make, and I hope there's enough people watching. So On3 recently put out a list of top collectives in the SEC. I think it was the country, and On to Victory was not mentioned, like in the top 20. I would say don't pay a lot of attention to that. On to Victory is important. It's but there's a lot going on in the collective world. Like On to Victory is part of the equation for sure. Where does Auburn stand as far as the NIL in the SEC? They're behind Alabama. They're behind Tennessee. They're behind Texas A&M. They're probably. I think Alabama, Texas A&M, and Tennessee, Georgia are up there. But look, Auburn, I will say this. There is enough alignment going on behind the scenes, and I think enough people involved right now, and it's just getting better, that Auburn if the situation's right and Auburn really, really wants to compete, I think they can compete for any one player against anybody in the SEC. The question comes, can you do it over and over and over again within the same class? That's where you got to be smart. It's the same way a GM tries to handle a roster in the NFL. You're like, I got a salary cap. I only got so much. I got to piece this thing together. And so I think overall, Auburn's probably behind those for sure. But like, they're pretty competitive, I think. I think they're pretty competitive. They're behind Texas A&M, Bama, Georgia, Tennessee, maybe LSU. But in any one situation, I think Auburn can compete. So if Auburn can go out and again, a lot of the guys that you recruit and get are not NIL is not number one on your list. Like a lot of your class is going to come because you've evaluated them, you like them. There's a depth chart. They like the depth chart. Like a lot of the guys you can recruit, it's the top tier. It's that top like handful of players that you're going to get in a class that are going to be like, that you're going to have to get serious with the NIL type offers. And I think in those scenarios, Auburn can be pretty competitive. Like I think Auburn's aggressive in that standpoint. I think they're getting better, but yeah, I don't think they're middle of the pack. I think they're better than. I think they're probably top six-ish. I mean, I think their NIL is pretty close to being kind of where they need to be. I mean, they're still not quite there yet, but they can compete. If it came down to a player or two, and he was like, I want this guy, I don't want to lose him, I think Auburn can put together an NIL package that would be very competitive with about anybody. What do you expect from the DBs? Will we spy their quarterback? I don't know. I mean, I think the DBs, it'll be interesting. I thought Jaron Thompson played well last week. I think it'll be interesting to see if Antonio Kite plays. And does Keontae get his spot back, or do they stick with Antonio Kite? That'll be interesting because Keontae, he struggled. Was that all hamstring, or does Keontae need to be playing in the nickel? I don't know. But Champ's playing better at the nickel. So, like, I'm really curious to see what happens with Keontae this week. Because Champ's a pretty good athlete and is getting better and is young. And Antonio Kite's young. And you'd love to get those guys a chance to develop. Versus putting Keontae back out there and then stunting the growth maybe of somebody like Champ Anthony. So I'm interested to see if Keontae gets back out there, or if it's like, hey, we're going to roll with Antonio and Tay Lee and Champ Anthony and Keontae, you're going to be primary punt returner and you'll still get your opportunities in the secondary. But I'm curious to see sort of how that evolves. Caleb Harris and Sylvester Smith, by the way, at safety, played a bunch of snaps, and played well. So I think that's a credit to I think it's a little bit of credit to Jaron Thompson. There's no doubt he has a part in coaching those guys up. And so, yeah, I think the secondary will be interesting. But all eyes are on quarterback, man. All our eyes are going to be on the quarterback situation and Hank Brown and spying the quarterback's going to be interesting. Dampier, good athlete. I think he's top 20-ish nationally in total offense from an individual standpoint. Right? So he's going to make plays. I think Arizona, they scored 40 points on Arizona. Of course, Arizona scored 60. So I think it'll be interesting. I mean, you got Eugene Asante off the keys to spy a little bit. No, I think to me the key is the defensive line has got to contain a little bit. They got to have a little bit more. Hopefully, there's a little more focus on, hey, let's get upfield, but the ends, I need you guys to not let him out so easy. Mendoza was like within a second and a half, if the first guy wasn't there, he just bailed. He was just able to bail out so easily. And then the play extended, and then you have receivers dragging, and credit him for making some plays. But I would like to see them contain their quarterback a little better. If they do, I think Auburn secondary can do the job. It's just we can't let a guy bounce out so easily out of the pocket the way Mendoza was. So it'll be an interesting challenge. Man, Cessna's bumping back here. Looks like it's picking up a little bit downtown, starting to get real crowded. right next door to Taco Mama. If you've never been down here to Session Cocktail, come check them out. Really nice people. They make great cocktails, man. Really good. They'll make you whatever, but try some of their cocktails that are on the menu, man. It's really good stuff. I would do that first. Hold on, we sent you. Well, if there's no more questions, we might pop out, man. I had a lot of fun. We're going to do this every Friday. Cole will be with me on some Fridays when he's in town. Like, I think he's in, I don't know where he is tonight, cover a high school game. But if there's some games where he's not and he comes down Friday night, he'll probably pop in with me at times too. And so he'll be involved and we'll chat and do all that good stuff. So, and this show will be archived. So as soon as it's done, it's going to be on YouTube, and you can go watch it again. Go to Auburn, go turn on the notifications, subscribe to YouTube.com, go to AuburnLive.com, subscribe as well. We've had a massive few months at AuburnLive.com, like crazy growth. I mean, we were already growing the first 3 years, but like the last few months, we just continue to take off. Man. So if you're not there, be there. It's a great place to be. We'll do this next Friday. Look, we'll be back this weekend. We'll see how Auburn plays. We'll have post-game coverage on the site. We'll come back and have our show Sunday afternoon, recapping the call-in show Sunday night. So a lot of stuff to tune into. Appreciate everybody for joining us and asking questions on this first show. I mean, we had a lot of fun. We'll do it again next Friday. See you guys.